Tokyo Mew Mew. I recently finished watching Tokyo Mew Mew about a week ago. I grew up watching Mew Mew Power. I never paid attention to the plot, and I'd never seen every episode. Knew the 4Kids dub, never watched the original series, so this was my first time seeing the series in full. So I know I'm late. I also wasn't initially going to do a video on it because I didn't want to equate every piece of media that I watch as some form of content that I could make, but I had way more thoughts on this than I thought I would, and I also want to talk to you guys about this because I want to get what the general consensus is as far as this show goes and its plot points and its characters. So to start off with things I want to talk about, the humans are destroying the earth concept was such an interesting plot, such an interesting story that was one of those instances where the villains aren't entirely wrong, and that was really impressive and really interesting, especially for a show such as this. Such an interesting plot point that was not expanded on in the finale. They didn't really expand on it in the way that I expected them to or thought that they would in the finale, and the romance took priority, and at the end of the day, Tokyo Mew Mew is a romance-based magical girl anime. That was apparent, but I feel like they dropped the ball on this secondary story so hard. It was quite frustrating that they didn't really expand on it in a major way. There could have been some improvements made, like they could have had the characters themselves making improvements to their environment. They could have done some themes on recycling, helping the planet in other ways. Maybe they didn't want to make the show a sort of like PSA, but at the same time, if that wasn't the case, then they wouldn't have made this show and this manga and this anime, this franchise the way that it is. So I don't know why they didn't expand on that by the end. And on that note, Quiche, Pie, and Tart just not caring about helping their people by the end of the season. Like, after the battle, I understand that they had feelings for the main cast members. They changed their opinions on Deep Blue. There was a whole thing. I understand that. But by the end of it, they kind of just like pieced out. Were like, well, we'll just go home. But what happens when they return back home? How did they help their people? Do the conditions improve on their home planet? Like, these were interesting secondary plots that they could have expanded on in the finale, added some story to that they didn't, and I couldn't understand. They just left. They were just gone. like what happened? What happened to their motives? And on the topic of Quiche, Pie, and Tart, I have to talk about Quiche in general. He has done nothing but cross Ichigo's boundaries, force himself upon her, and cause her general stress and discomfort. And I'm supposed to feel bad when he's breathing his final breaths? Please. The montage? Oh, that was just unbelievable. Like, give me a break. I understood also that this wasn't going to be his final appearance. I knew that he was going to live through this, so I also was like not worried and not taking it seriously, but I also just... Ooh. They also had Ichigo feeling sorry for him, crying out his name and such. Like, what did he do to warrant these tears from you, girl? I understand that these feelings are realistic and possible for her to have, and I also think that at that point, he had just saved her in that moment from her own end, so that was probably another reason why she was feeling bad for him. However, I didn't like, I was not a fan of it. I was not a fan of this. I, however, didn't hate his character. I know I just made it sound like I hate him, but I didn't entirely hate him. I think that he was entertaining. He definitely raised the stakes in the relationship between Ichigo and Aoyama, kind of adding this third-party dynamic to make it like spicy and like, ooh, what's gonna happen? And his conviction in saving his home planet and his people was believable and admirable. But I just couldn't feel that bad when the story wanted me to. I think that the things that he was doing made me uncomfortable, and I just didn't like watching that. But I also don't have that childhood nostalgia for him as a character. I don't think I would have had a crush on him as a kid either. This wasn't my type of favorite character, and Aoyama really wasn't either back then. I think had I been paying attention to the plot, I think as a kid I would have liked Shirogane. Yes, that kind of like brooding, and it's like, is that even any better? However, I did like Aoyama. I liked him. He was a nice guy. I've seen a lot of people say that he's a boring choice for her, but at least he's respectful. At least he displays actively that he actually wants to be with Ichigo. Shirogane would have been a good choice too, but they would have been so very angsty together. There would have been so much angst in that pairing. So much fighting. It would have been entertaining though. I won't lie. But I like that Ichigo and Aoyama are there for each other and keep each other grounded and genuinely like each other. That was very cute to see between them. And maybe Aoyama was too nice for his own good. The fact that he waited all that time in the rain was crazy. I know by that time that he knew that she was a Mew Mew and whatnot, but my god, to wait all that time? Wow. I don't know how realistic that was, but it was very cute. I also did enjoy the twists and turns in the second half. The mysteries like, is Aruto Shirogane? Is the Blue Knight Shirogane or Aoyama? That stuff was very juicy and very fun to watch as someone who hadn't seen any spoilers and didn't know what was going to happen. So I was very invested in those kinds of things and it kept the second half interesting. Now, I also have to talk about some issues that I had with the narratives of the girls, of the team. There were times throughout the show when the 4 other girls would do nothing but react to what was going on in Ichigo's love life. Like, there would be times when the 4 of them would stand in a line and just stand there while they reacted.
After all the friends I've made, I really thought I had everything. Then I saw you.
I couldn't believe it. Now, listen, I think that a lot of the episodes where that was present were marked filler episodes, so they weren't necessarily in the manga, but there were times when they were really only there to add dialogue to Ichigo's story. There were also times when they had their own focus episodes, they had their own solo episodes, but this was truly Ichigo's story, like Mew Mew Power. Ha! Tokyo Mew Mew. I can't believe I just said Mew Mew Power. Tokyo Mew Mew was truly Ichigo's story. She is the main character, but I would have appreciated if the other 4 girls were fleshed out and had motives that were clearly displayed and were more important to the plot. A couple of them more than others. This was very much Ichigo's story as the main character, but it didn't have to be that their lives revolved around her as if they had nothing else going on. I didn't appreciate that. I will say, I do believe in their friendship. I do believe that they're a close-knit group of friends, and that was displayed very well in the show. I believed in their bonds, and all of that was definitely apparent. And Pudding was my favorite. She was my favorite as a kid and she's still my favorite. I think I always identified with like the younger sister type characters. Being a younger sister myself, I felt seen. Her friendship with Tart was very cute. I liked seeing that dynamic. Watching this, I also really liked Lettuce for the few episodes that she had and the few moments that she had. I really liked her and I identified with her a lot. We have to talk about something because before taking on Tokyo Mew Mew, I was under the impression, just based on fan discussions and stuff that I'd seen on the internet before watching it, I was under the impression that Lettuce and Pie would end up together because that's what everyone would talk about. I would see a whole lot of pairing of those two, and this would have made sense because of the interactions that they had in the show. They never had a sit-down conversation, the two of them, but the times that they had these moments together felt very emotionally charged. There felt like there was tension. It would have made a lot of sense if they built on that. And then I watched the show, and by the second half, Lettuce is blushing when Shirogane is speaking to her. Where is this coming from? Like, what? Where did this come from? I don't think they even really talked in the first half, and now all of a sudden we're pairing up Lettuce and Shirogane. For what reason? And it wasn't like they were a bad pairing, like to each their own, but how am I supposed to get invested in this when they had no prior setup, no prior exchanges that were memorable? Meanwhile, now I understand why people talk about Lettuce and Pie the way that they do, because meanwhile, Lettuce and Pie are like estranged lovers. It's like, what is going on? Okay, like I get it. I do. Moving on. Zakura was also very good. I ended up liking her a whole lot. She actually ended up being one of my favorites. And although she didn't get as much story as she could have, I felt like even like the few times that she did get story, the animation directors went off. Even in the marked filler episode, the line art, the animation jump, like they put the dollars into Zakura. I was like, wow, the favoritism. But it was good. It was good. I did like her character moments. You know what? I was also under the impression that episode, I think it's 43, the episode with Zakuro and Mint, I was under the impression that that was manga canon. It just seemed like something that I'd also seen a whole lot of discussion on. I was so excited to watch it. I just wish that that episode was like canon. It was...
After all.
speaking of Mint, I actually didn't like her in the first half. I felt like she was very antagonistic towards Ichigo, and at times it was warranted when Ichigo would like show up to work late or she just wasn't pulling her weight. But then there were times when it was like, why is she being so mean? Like, this doesn't make any sense right now. But by that second half of the show, her and her relationship with Ichigo did make sense to me. I did end up liking her. I always tend to end up liking snooty characters anyway, so I wasn't very surprised by myself. And Ichigo as a character was fine. I had issues with how she behaved in the finale, of course. That whole her trying to convince herself that Aoyama wasn't Deep Blue. That was quite a moment. I understand she was just in shock. I knew that. And I could understand the situation as it was playing out. But when the girls were thrown against the wall, I was like, okay, we gotta snap out of it. Now everyone's getting thrashed. I also do wish that they expanded more on why Ichigo was the chosen one. And I do think I don't know what the entire like fan theory is, or if it's a theory or if it's fact, but I think it has to do with her and Aoyama being destined, falling in love with each other, and because of that, she's the only one who could have brought Aoyama out of that Deep Blue state and saved him and saved the world, so that could have been why she was the chosen one. I don't know actually, so if you know, feel free to comment and tell me. But in any case, I wish they would have spelled it out. I wish they wouldn't have left it up for interpretation. I wish they would have said why she was the chosen one and made that part of the story as well. The romance really took the driver's seat in this one, and like I liked it, but it just, there were other stories that were added in and scarcely mentioned that they could have expanded on, and they didn't. And now I'm left with these questions. I just wish that the show spelled out a whole lot more things than it did. But at the same time, I enjoyed myself watching it. It was still a fun show to watch. I still had a good time watching it. I did enjoy the first half more, I think, probably because there was a bit of nostalgia sprinkled in there. It did feel a bit more like Saturday morning cartoon-ish in that first half. However, the second half was still very interesting, as I said, with the new plot points and the, ooh, what's gonna happen? The mysteries, who's Deep Blue and who's the Blue Knight and who's Aruto. That stuff was very interesting. Also, what happened to the wand? You know that wand in the mid-season finale? The one, like the heart-shaped one that was like held and revered as this ultimate weapon. What happened to it? Was not used in the finale at all. I know that they're trying to sell toys. I know that they're just trying to make the bucks. But like, for the plot though, why was it not used again? I don't know. Now, I did have those issues that I spoke about, but apparently the reboot is fixing those things, and I did watch the first season last year as it was airing. I wasn't entirely happy with it because I felt like they were really rushing with it. They were trying to fit in 26 episodes of content in 13, so I understand why it took them cutting plots and combining episodes, and it felt rushed for a reason. But I was not happy with the way that Purin's debut was so shafted. It felt so throwaway. It bothered me so bad when I watched it back then that I stopped watching it for a couple weeks. But I'm still giving the reboot a chance. I'm still watching even the second season as it's airing now, and just seeing what they're gonna do to fix some of these issues, giving the girls more plot points and more things to work with. I don't think it looks like they're going to have Pie and Lettuce end up together, but we can only dream, right? Also, I bought the A la Mode manga very recently. I used to have the first volume of this as a kid. Don't remember what goes on in it. Lost it a long time ago. But I'm happy to have the omnibus now, so I'm excited to read it and see what goes on in it. Although I don't think, from what I've heard people say, it doesn't seem to be like a very serious story. But I'm excited nonetheless. I really liked Berry, and her design really influenced a lot of my anime art at the ripe age of 10 years old. Again, tell me your thoughts on Tokyo Mew Mew, because I don't know what the general consensus is and a lot of the things that I talked about. Feel free to disagree, because I also just want to know what people are thinking and what people have thought about these characters and these stories. So I will see you soon with another video, and have a very lovely rest of your day. Berry Shirayuki is a completely normal high school girl until she's hit by the Mew Mew beam. That feeling when you're hit by the Mew Mew beam?